Marvel Superheroes is one of the most unbalanced and bomby limited formats that we have ever seen. And if that's a little frustrating to you, you are not alone. When I asked in my Discord how people are feeling about the format, literally nobody said that they are loving the set and winning a lot. Having said that, I firmly believe that when things, rares, mythics, and unbalanced color pairs get this distorted in a limited environment, that actually opens a big opportunity to use data not just to win more, but to find cards and strategies that people are undervaluing that can be a whole lot more fun than just forcing the dominant color pair. That's exactly what we're going to do today. Using data from 17lands.com, thank you so much, 17lands, we're going to look at how much each color wins right now in Marvel, how much each color pair is played, and which specific cards are being drafted way later than they should be. If you've seen my charts before, they are new and improved. I worked hard to take into account your feedback to make it possible to read which color pair is which off of the page. And what we're gonna watch is how winning each color pair is evolve over the course of the format from release day until today. So we're starting out with blue-white at the top there, taking an early lead, black-red on the bottom. By June 25, blue-white is so far ahead of the others, it's actually continuing to open up a lead for that entire first week of the format. One full week in now, we've actually achieved a little bit more balance as blue-white fell off and black-red climbs from the lowest dip up to being kind of part of the pack. So by this point, about a week into the format, blue-white has fallen, black-red has risen and basically closed the gap to the next worst colors. And you can kind of think of the format as being blue-white in the number one position, where it is just way ahead of everything else. Green-white is a pretty clear number two, I would say. Then you have basically a three-way tie for third place between Orzhov, white-black, Simic, blue-green, and Golgari, black-green. And on the bottom is Dimir plus every single color pair that includes red. So red is the loser of the early format by far. And you'll notice you could basically think of it as a red versus white format, where every color pair that does not include red is above a certain line, and every color pair that does include red is below that curve. All right, but the next few days contain some surprises. Actually, the gap kind of reopens with black-red to a certain extent. And meanwhile, green-white rises to the point that it actually meets blue-white, and at a certain point, almost surpasses it. The color pair that actually does eventually dethrone blue-white as the number one most winning color pair in the format as of recording is actually Golgari, which has reached number one deck winning status. To make sure we're all on the same page, what this represents is the probability that a deck is going to win a game on Arena, given that it is a deck of a given color pair. So the probability that you win, given that you're piloting a Golgari deck right now, is just below 58%. The probabilities are all above 50% because these are users of the client 17 lands who happen to be more invested Magic players and win more than average. If you have more curiosities, I'll link a video in the description where I talk a lot about how these types of data are generated and how to understand them. Another quick point, this is a 3-day moving average, so you're not looking at huge zigzags as one day behaves a little bit differently from another day. All right, but this is only part of the story because yes, the probability that you win, given that you're playing a Golgari deck, is currently higher than the probability that you win, given that you're playing an Azorius deck. However, how many Golgari decks are there on Arena? How often should you actually be getting into Golgari? Because this doesn't necessarily mean that you should be playing Golgari more often than you're playing Azorius if Golgari is winning more often, but making up a way smaller proportion of the field. That would mean that if we're equally likely to play either one of those two decks when we sit down to draft, maybe Golgari would actually win a lot less. So let's see how many people are playing the different archetypes. On day one, people were a fair bit more likely to want to play blue-white than any other color pair. And then as the next few days went on, it absolutely skyrocketed as the word went out that blue-white was absolutely where it was at. But then either as people got bored or as the blue-white win rate started to decline, so too did the number of people choosing to end up in blue-white in their drafts. The way that things stand right now is that about twice as many people are playing blue-white as any other color pair, and they are about 3 times as more likely to play blue-white, or more than that, as any other non-green-white color pair. Sorry, let me restate. They're playing blue-white twice as much as green-white, and blue-white at least 3 times as much as anything else. The thing about that is, turning back to our win rate data, that's about how often they should be playing blue-white to maintain an equilibrium where it's pretty much in a 4-way tie for the most winning deck with Golgari, green-black, Simic, green-blue, and Selesyna, green-white. Okay, so this is your first take-home message for winning on Arena. If you're feeling bored because you always have to force green-white, or always have to force blue-white, or you're not sure how much you should play blue-white to actually win optimally, like should I be forcing it still? Should I be staying away from it because now everyone knows it's the best? It seems like blue-white is about tied for the best archetype, so long as people are playing it about twice as often as green-white. So roughly speaking, when you sit down to a draft table, you should probably be about twice as likely to want to be blue-white as green-white the way that things are right now in Premier Draft on Arena. But blue-white is also maintaining a pretty similar win rate to green-black, whereas on our chart of number of games played, it is way farther ahead of green-black, which is somewhere down in the big clump at the bottom. So you should be like probably at least 3 times as often ending up in blue-white as you are in green-black if you want to get a deck that wins at about the same rate. And probably, in fact, pretty certainly, you should be more than 3 times as likely to be blue-white as everything else. I think it would also be fair to put Simic, green-blue, right alongside Golgari, green-black, as about 3 times less often as blue-white. And so, you should be playing green-white a little bit more often than green-black or Simic. You should be playing green-black or Simic a little bit more often than everything else. All of that goes for Premier Draft on Arena right now. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I'm guessing Traditional Draft is in a pretty similar spot. What if I'm just someone who, maybe drafts at Friday Night Magic? I don't know if the pod is going to be, up on the Arena meta quite so much. They don't necessarily spend all evening watching Unlimited Splash and getting the lowdown on what color pairs are good. So my takeaway message for you is you should at least be twice as likely to want to draft blue-white in that environment as pretty much anything else, at least, and probably way more likely. And the reason I say that is you can look all the way back to, let's say, day 4 or 5 of the format, when people were playing like more than 9,000 games with blue-white and fewer than 4,000 games with the next most drafted archetype. And on that same day, June 27 or so, there was a huge gap still between blue-white and the next most winning archetype, even though it was way more played. Part of the process of the win rate gaps closing here was not just that people became more likely to play blue-white and close the gap. It was also that people were learning what cards are good in the archetypes other than blue-white. It was pretty obvious at the beginning how to build blue-white and win. It took longer to figure out how to build, say, green-based decks and win. So that is exactly why next up, I am going to dig in color by color, and we are going to look at the commons and uncommons that you should be prioritizing more in your drafts if you want to win more. I'm especially going to focus on the non-white aggro or white mid-range, white creature-based archetypes, because those are a little bit more obvious, and that's part of what is making the format feel more samey. So if you not just want to maximize your win rate, but also want to have a more varied experience in the format and be able to play a wider variety of decks, this is extra critical information for you. Because this is going to tell you how to build a good version of those decks that is actually possible to assemble on Arena using pieces that other people are undervaluing so that you can do it without burning too many of your gems. While we get into that, I need to talk about something I had not planned to talk about today, but that I realized I need to actually address on the channel, and that is YouTube memberships. So if you don't know, YouTube has this thing where you can become a member of a channel, you pay YouTube a certain amount, and the creator that you're becoming a member for gets a cut of it. The reason I'm talking about this is someone became a member of my channel. Huge shout out to you and thank you. And I realized I did not have perks for that person. So look, I'm not trying to move memberships here. I have a job that I love and I do this for fun as a hobby, but I do want to make sure that if someone buys a membership, there's like something fun for you. There's something that you're actually getting out of it. So I had to come up with some perks to make it, you know, not like regrettable decision for that person. So I'm going to tell you what my perks are, just so that you know, if you were ever moved to become a member, that this is what would happen. So first of all, I'm posting about one new video a week that's available 24 hours in advance for members. So if you ever want to watch a little bit more into the future, any membership level will get you that. I also made a channel on the Discord that is, here, let's make it big. It's called the Members Lounge. The moment that you purchase a membership, you'll be allowed into this channel forever, even if you subsequently cancel your membership. Obviously, the whole Discord is staying completely free, but we're just adding in this little members lounge. And I'll do things like maybe the poll that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, you know, maybe I'd do an extra poll and put that in the members lounge. And it is a channel that I'll feel some obligation to monitor and look at. And so it's an easier channel to chat with me, ask me questions. And then finally, there is a level where you get to the front of the queue for monthly draft reviews. So I do at least one draft review video every month where I review people's drafts for free. I'm going to continue doing that. It will stay free for the vast majority. But the problem is there are more drafts out there that I can actually review. And so if you are a member at this member tier, I'll make sure that you're included in one of those videos at least once a month. But don't worry, again, for everyone, the Discord's staying free. Draft reviews are still going to be available for free as much as I can handle. All right, so that's memberships. I didn't expect to talk about that today, but I realized it was important when someone actually bought one. And also, of course, if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure that you're subscribed for more videos like this one. All right, so let's talk about this plot. And here is the way to understand it. On the x-axis, we have the average last seen at. This is what 17 Lands calls the average place in a pack where the card actually gets picked. An alpha of 4, for example, like this dot here, means that on average, this card was last seen at pick 4. So that's around when people are taking it. On the y-axis, we have game in hand win rate. This is the probability that you go on to win a game, given that you draw this card into your hand at some point in the course of the game. This dashed line here represents the line of best fit between alpha and game in hand win rate. Why do we care about that? Because cards that win more on average should be picked earlier in the draft. So if a card has a 65% game in hand win rate, that you're going to win your game 65% of the time after drawing this card, it probably should be picked really, really, really early in the draft. If it has a really low game in hand win rate, for 17 Lands users, 50% is really bad. You would expect it to be picked very, very late in the pack. I did a whole video about how to interpret this stuff, again, linked in the description. The short form is, these are not causal features of a card. It's not that drawing a card causes you to win 65% of the time, but often, especially with commons, that win rate just suggests that it's appearing in a deck that is really good. The type of deck that has this card in it tends to be a winning sort of a deck. But then obviously there are also some individual bombs like Captain Marvel that just when you play them or when you draw them, you're just almost certainly winning because of the strength of that card. So it's a mixture of individual card attributes and the strength of the decks that it's showing up in. Okay, so that said, looking at the gap between a card's game in hand win rate and the expected win rate of a card with that ALSA score, that average last seen at, can give you a strong signal about when a card is not being taken in the appropriate place. So the dot that I identified first with this first arrow, it's being taken right on the line. That means a card with that ALSA 4, usually has a game in hand win rate of about 60%. So it's not being over prioritized or being taken too early, and it's not being under prioritized or taken too late. Okay, so this helps us identify especially under drafted cards. Let's pull some of them out here. The one you can probably see with your eyes, the one that is the biggest outlier here among green commons, and we're focusing color by color and on commons and uncommons. The green common that is the most underdrafted is Rapid Rescue. The 1 mana for green, mill 2 cards, get a permanent back in game 2. I have seen this. I've called this out in 2 of my 3 last videos. I've complained about this because I keep getting Rapid Rescues like 14th pick. This card, check it out. Look, people pick it about after pick 8 on average. After pick 8, it is in the absolute dregs of the pack. And look at this. Rapid Rescue wins with a win rate of about 57, 58%. That's typical of a card that is picked before pick 5. What that means is that people are taking Rapid Rescue about 3 picks too late on average. Whenever you're picking Rapid Rescue, you should probably be picking it about 3 picks sooner than you are. Another interesting one, the number 2 most underdrafted green common, is Giant Growth. People pick it after pick 7. It wins more like a pick 6 card. So not a big difference, not that noticeable. I did not expect this, but it actually wins more than people are giving it credit for. Oh yeah, and I should say Giant Growth, a 1 green for an instant. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Number 3 most underdrafted green common, not by much, but by a little, is Pet Avengers. Wins like a 5th pick picked around pick 6 on average. This is the 3 and a green for a 4/4 reach that powers up to put a counter on itself and make it 3/2. So some commonalities among these green commons. I mean, it seems very, maybe a little bit value oriented, but also very kind of creature based, permanent based, and maybe very combat centric. Because remember, this is not just about what cards are undervalued, but these cards are going in decks that are winning more than the investment in these picks would seem to indicate. Okay, green uncommons. Number 1 most underdrafted green uncommon, Rick Jones. This is the 0/3 for 1, where you can pay 3 and tap it to mill some cards and then put a hero or enchantment into your hand. So again, a very value oriented creature, also a 1-drop. So this is winning like a 5th pick, and it is picked somewhere after pick 7 on average. So wherever Rick Jones is in your pick order, maybe you should bump him about 2 picks forward. If you would usually pick him pick 6, then maybe pick him pick 5. But on average, people are undervaluing him by about 2 picks too late. Another 1-drop is our second most underdrafted green uncommon, Reptile Dinomorpher. This is the 1/2 for 1 green. You can pay 3 to make it a 3/5 with Vigilance and Reach, or pay 6 to make it a 6/6 with Trample until end of turn. This card, by the way, I even said in maybe yesterday's video, I think the win rate data even understates how good it is because it's just so confusing to play with. If you're really on your game, using your whole timer, experience with playing this card, making good decisions, I think it can be great because it's really hard to do combat with. It holds cards back really nicely. Sometimes it can just kind of push lethal out of nowhere, but the problem is all of that costs mana and has an opportunity cost, and has a lot of sequencing decisions with like, when do I actually activate it? Do I activate it before combat to give it vigilance, after combat as a surprise after they block? I mean, not a very good surprise, but you know what I mean. So I actually think this card maybe is even better, but it's playing out like a 4th pick. People are picking about pick 6. And finally, She-Hulk. Everyone seems to be pretty up on how good this card is, but it's winning like a 2nd pick and people are taking it around pick 3. So you could even move it 1 pick sooner and be happy. Again, this is a very value oriented creature. It seems like creatures that make value is a through line. Also 1-drops are a through line in what's underdrafted in green. So you should take that and not just think about just these cards, but the kinds of decks that might be getting undervalued. All right, now black. Black actually has a very simple through line. So this dotted line, by the way, I kept it the same for every single plot. So you can see compared to the average winningness of a card with a certain alpha, how do different colors overall stack up, right? And that lets us say actually black overall is a little bit overdrafted. So almost every black common is a little bit less winning than its alpha suggests it should be. Or in other words, people should be picking the black commons just a little bit late than they are overall. The 2 exceptions are Hydra Infiltration, which I totally understand. This looks like a do nothing 4-mana enchantment, but this is the 3 and a black for an enchantment that when it enters, target opponent discards 2 cards, and when a creature you control attacks alone, you get to drain your opponent for 1 life. Turns out to be a little bit better than people are giving it credit for. Pick it 1 or 2 picks earlier than you are on average. And the other one is Stolen Stark Tech. This one's playing out also kind of like a 5th to 6th pick, being picked after pick 7. And actually, those are the only 2 worth talking about. Like, technically, maybe Unliving Legionnaire is ever so slightly above the line, but not really. So then let's look at the black uncommons. In contrast to the black commons, there are some that are genuinely underdrafted. Number one is Ronin. This is the 3/3 for 2 and a black. You can, and it's complicated, you can pay 2 life, add 2 mana of any one color, spend this mana to cast equipment spells or activate equipment abilities. You can only do it once each turn. And you can sack an equipment that's attached to Ronin to give target creature -4/-4, but only as a sorcery. This complicated card is playing out like a 4th or 5th pick, but people are picking it after pick 6. The next most underdrafted black uncommon is also an equipments related card. This is Whiplash Vengeful Engineer, 2/2 for 1 black that enters tapped. When it attacks, if it's equipped, you drain the opponent for X, where X is the number of equipment on it. Whiplash playing out maybe like a 4th pick. People are picking it after pick 5. It is a 2/2 for 1. It does enter tapped, but it is a 2/2 for 1. So I think it kind of makes sense that it's playing a lot better than something you would take pick 6. And then the third most underdrafted black uncommon is Swordsman Sharp Scoundrel, a 2/2 for 1 and a black. When another villain you control enters, you attach an equipment you control to a creature you control. And when an equipped creature you control attacks, it connives. Makes sense, right? 2/2 for 2, that it's pretty easy to make it connive or make a creature connive. And it gives you some mana discounts on equipment. I think it makes a lot of sense, but there's one very solid through line. Swordsman, by the way, playing out like a 4th pick. People are picking it a little after pick 5. Bump it about 1 pick earlier in your pick order. There's a very clear through line, though. A very clear through line. Swordsman, an equipment creature. Whiplash, an equipment creature. Ronin, an equipment creature. Stolen Stark Tech in equipment. Hydra Infiltration, a card that incentivizes attacking alone, which is related to the go tall strategy, where you just stack a bunch of equipment on a creature. All of this points to black equipment are systematically underdrafted in the format. Draft black equipment a little bit higher. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the white-black equipments deck as intended by Wizards of the Coast is underdrafted. That could be one way of interpreting this, but maybe this also just means a lot of the equipment card are good on rate. Maybe just having a little incidental equipment is enough to make like Ronin good, or maybe just being a 2/2 for 1 is just good enough, even if it also says all this stuff about equipments. Or maybe it means there's some kind of a Dimir deck that uses like equipment conniving and just having some stats on the board and access to some removal. And that Dimir equipment deck is kind of a sleeper deck that we'll discover is the reason that these cards end up winning a little bit more. We could dig deeper into the data to get more answers on this, but suffice it to say, explore the black equipment space. If you're looking to not get punished too hard by experimenting, these are cards you can pick up late in the draft that actually are going to win more often than most people expect them to. All right, so that was green and black. Next up is blue. The most underdrafted blue common actually surprised me. And by the way, blue has one of these situations, the opposite of black, where actually basically every blue card is underdrafted. The points are sized so that they correspond to how often the cards were put in people's decks. And even though blue cards were put in people's decks a whole heck of a lot, they still are getting underdrafted. Almost all of the blue commons are getting underdrafted. The most underdrafted is Giant Sized Flying Ant. This is the 3/2 for 3 and a blue flash flying. When it enters, tap target non-land permanent or untap target non-land permanent. This kind of makes sense. I remember a limited level ups podcast with Jason Yee, where Jason was saying about drafting at the Pro Tour that when you're drafting in a very, very high skill, high knowledge pod, there are certain cards that can just kill a player that you shouldn't sleep on. Like a 3 power flyer that's overcosted can just end a game. And after that, even though these cards are often very clunky, I started thinking a lot more about if I'm going to waste a pick on something, invest a pick around like pick 7, pick 6, pick 8, that kind of. Pick 6 is even a little not exactly at the dregs of the pack, but especially when you get to like pick 9, pick 10, maybe some of those pods that are undervaluing a card like Giant Size Flying Ant the most, the long tail where it ends up being like the last pick at the table. I would rather take a creature that can kill a player on its own if left unchecked than, I don't know, like a Vibranium Energy Dagger or a Thirst for Knowledge or something, which isn't necessarily going to get the job done on its own. So they made me think differently about this kind of card, and I can totally see it in the Giant Size Flying Ant. A very clunky card, but hey, it's actually winning like a 4th or 5th pick, but people are picking it after pick 7 on average. All right, next up, Trickster Stratagem. I was not at all surprised to see this card here. So this is 3 and a blue for a sorcery. The owner of target creature an opponent controls puts it on their library second from the top or on the bottom, then up to one target creature you control connives. This is an effect that I call super bounce. You don't just bounce a creature to their hand, you bounce it all the way into their library. It usually comes with something extra, like it's an instant, it has a discount. In this case, it lets a creature you control connive, which is really good. This type of effect is always underdrafted. Run Behind in Secrets of Strixhaven was a similar card that was underdrafted. I was just playing a bunch of Bloomburrow where they knew these effects are underdrafted, and I can only assume that's why they named the version of it in that set Dire Downdraft. So Trickster's Stratagem is definitely getting direly downdrafted in this set. It wins like a third pick. It's picked after pick 4. And by the way, the win rate of Trickster's Stratagem makes it basically tied for the best common in the format with Hero in Training, the white 2/2 for 3 draw card. So it should be picked knowing nothing else about what's going on. You should be playing Trickster's Stratagem, picking Trickster's Stratagem, aiming for the kinds of decks that want a Trickster Stratagem above any other common except Hero in Training. That's one way to think about that. So if you pack one, pick one, any common, you should be just as happy for it to be Trickster's Stratagem as anything else, or at least as happy. But of course you would rather pack one, pick 3 it, because that's about where it wins. Okay, but pick this higher. And I've been talking about this in my last several videos. I think I got like a pick 8 Trickster Stratagem yesterday. It's kind of egregious. Pick this a lot earlier. Second most underdrafted blue common, I Am Iron Man. This is the 2 and a blue for an instant. Until end of turn, target artifact or creature becomes a 4/4 flyer, and you also get to draw a card off of it. That is, unless they remove your creature or artifact in response. This is winning like a 5th pick or a 6th pick-ish, picked a little bit after pick 7. This could signal that maybe the blue-red artifacts deck specifically is a little bit underdrafted, because presumably the ideal case here is you like make a treasure token into a 4/4. But I actually think this card is just good rate. This is a very, actually I think a functional reprint of a card that we've seen before, and that one was also a very good card that was underdrafted. So I think this is just a good rate. Okay, so blue was a lot of 3 and 4 power stuff, or 3 and 4 mana cost stuff at common, very value-centric. Next up, blue uncommons, and actually a lot more of these are in fact overdrafted. So they're not all underdrafted like the blue commons basically were, but there are a few that are underdrafted. Okay, number 1 most underdrafted blue common is a bit of a cheesy one, or blue uncommon I mean. That's Justice, the 2/2 for 2 and a blue flyer. When it enters, you return a non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand, and when another non-land permanent you control is returned to its owner's hand, put a +1/+1 counter on Justice. I mean, Mana Wars, which is the ancient card that this is a variant of, have been amazing, and they've been basically the best uncommon in like every format in the last few years. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but not that much of one. Justice is a card where if you picked it pick 1, you might be a little bit sad, but it's basically your average pack 1, pick 1. If you open a pack and there's a Justice in it, you might not be actively happy, but you're not sad. Certainly not sad. And yet people are picking it on average a little bit after pick 2. That's probably just the rare and mythic effect. Not even saying people are rare drafting, just, you know, it makes sense that the broad arena community is not always pack 1, pick 1ing an uncommon. But if you, or pack 2 pick 1ing or pick 3 pick 1ing, if you pick 1 at Justice, you're doing just fine. Stature Size Shifter is the second most underdrafted blue uncommon, a 1/1 for 1 blue, can't be blocked while she has 1 power, but then you can power her up suddenly for X and 2 blue, put X +1/+1 counters on her. This one is picked a little bit after pick 4. It's winning more like a pick 3, maybe a pick 2. And then Falcon Wings Harness is the third one. Another equipment, by the way. Hey, maybe Dimir equipment isn't such a dream after all. 1 and a blue for an equipment. When it enters, attach it to a creature you control. That creature gets +1/+1, has flying in ward 1, and you can equip for 2 and a blue. So in blue uncommons, it's all flying or evasive creatures. This is part of why I say flying is so good in the format. It's actually so good, people are not even weighing it appropriately. People should be taking any blue uncommon that has anything to do with flying basically higher than you even are right now. All right, red is a very different picture. So we have red and then white. I saved white for last because the point of the video is let's see where we have room to experiment, room to have fun, room to raise our win rate. And white is not exactly uncharted territory. Red, I would also say we should mostly discount for a different reason, which is nothing is underdrafted. If you really squint and zoom in a lot, you could say Hawkeye's Bow, the 1 red for an equipment, equipped creature gets +1/+0 and reach. When it is tapped, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and equip 1. You could maybe say that's the tiniest bit underdrafted, but not really. It's basically right on the line. So red, you should actually draft red less even than it is being drafted right now. Certainly all of the red commons. And by the way, that kind of makes sense because red is being played about as little as possible. Actually, if you look at our number of games played slide, red is all the way at the bottom. People are avoiding red massively. You have no competition in red. And yet, the least played archetype, Gruul, red-green, is also still the least winning archetype. Brutal. And black-red and blue-red are not that far above it. But what the underdrafted data tell us is that if you do get into red, it should be a high rarity reason. So there is an underdrafted uncommon, like properly underdrafted, which is Jessica Jones. She wins like a 3rd or 4th pick. She's picked like a 4th or 5th pick. And that's the 2 and a 3, 2/3 for 2 and a red. Tap, put a stun counter on her, exile the top X cards of your library where X is her power, and you can play those cards this turn. Then there is Speed, Young Avenger, the 2/2 for 1 and a red haste. When you cast a non-creature spell, you can pay 1 and give a creature with haste basically haste shadow. It can only be blocked by other hasty creatures. This one's winning maybe like a 5th pick, picked after pick 6. And finally, 3rd most underdrafted red uncommon, Misty Knight, 3/1 for 1 and a red, 2-tap, discard a card, draw a card for each card you've discarded this turn, winning like a 5.5 pick, picked a little bit after pick 6. So not even that underdrafted at all. By and large, red is overdrafted. All right, I'm not going to talk too much about white because mostly it's right on the line. Basically, white can still sustain a little bit more drafting, but not that much. White is one of those, maybe the color, where things did shift a little bit if we exclude the first week of the format. So what I'm going to show you right now, this is the whole format overall, over all time. If we just look at this past week, then things did fall a little bit. Like white did become, I wouldn't even say overdrafted. It's just that it's more appropriately drafted now. Basically, people should not be drafting more white, but they don't need to draft less white. If there's any one card that remains a little bit underdrafted in white, it's Crowd of True Believers, picked around pick 7, but it's winning more like a 5th or 6th pick. So you could bump Crowd of True Believers 1 pick earlier in your pick order than it is right now. And by the end, of course, Crowd of True Believers is the 1/2 for 1. Tap target creature you control, it's attacking alone. Sorry, tap it. Target creature you control, it's attacking alone, gets +1/+0, and you gain 1 life. Now, I do want to talk about a badly overdrafted card in white. Stay away from the Kree Commandos. If we extend the line down, I don't even know. Kree Commandos is winning like a 10th pick, but people are taking it around pick 7. This is a nice sign for those of you who are worried that you might be overdrafting blue-white or green-white, probably especially blue-white. If you are at the point where you are in pick 7 and there's a Kree Commandos up against, let's say, a Rapid Rescue, take the Rapid Rescue. Rapid Rescue is winning like a 4th pick. Kree Commandos is winning like a 10th pick. And yet people are picking, on average, the Kree Commandos 1 pick earlier than the Rapid Rescue. So bump Rapid Rescue up in your pick order if you are facing Kree Commandos, or maybe a card like, let's say, Hydra Infiltration. This is a card that people are taking a little bit after pick 7. It's winning like a pick 5. So if you find yourself saying, well, you know, there's a Rapid Rescue, there's a Hydra Infiltration, but of my first 6 picks, you know, 3 of them are white. There's still a good shot I go white. So why not just take the white creature with flying, Kree Commandos? How bad could it be? That is exactly the moment when you are forcing white too much. That's the moment when you should be pivoting, speculating on the really good green common, the really good black common that is on average still there, pick 7, when it just shouldn't be. That's your signal that another color is open. All right, and among white uncommons, actually the number 1 most underdrafted white uncommon is Political Triumph. There are some underdrafted white uncommons for sure. Political Triumph, the 1 white plan. When a creature you control enters, scry 1 and put a plan counter on it. And then on the 4th one, you sack this draw card and put a +1 counter on each creature you control. This one's winning more like a 2nd pick. It's picked after pick 3. And then the other one is Agent Maria Hill. Pretty much the same exact stats. 2/1 for 1 white. When it becomes tapped to pay a teamer cost, put a +1/+1 counter on her and draw a card. Both very fair and balanced uncommons, I assure you. Okay, what are the overall winners? So I did focus on color pairs here just because it's way easier to communicate about. If you start getting into every combination of 3 colors, every combination of 4 colors, every colorless card, every multicolor card, you know, we'd be looking at like a 5-hour slide deck, which could be fun for some of us, but I don't have that time in my life, unfortunately. But I did pool all of the colors together for commons, and here's what I saw. The five most underdrafted commons. Number 1 was Rapid Rescue. Mill 2, get a permanent, gain 2 life. Pick it earlier. If you take one thing out of the slide deck, it's to leave all the Rapid Rescues for me. Thank you. No. It's to pick Rapid Rescue earlier than you're picking it. After that are 3 that we saw: Hydra Infiltration, I Am Iron Man, and Giant Size Flying Ant. And actually another one, Subterranean Cavern. This is really funny. It's a nice pure signal that green-black is maybe a little underdrafted right now in the format. If the green-black gain land, which is what Subterranean Cavern is, if that's a little bit underdrafted, hey, that means green-black almost certainly is a little underdrafted. The other thing it could mean is it's extra important to have good mana in green-black, but I think it just means in this case that green-black is probably overall underdrafted. All right, then finally, we'll look at all the uncommons pooled together, including multicolor and colorless ones. And then we will wrap up with some conclusions, just tying together everything that we've seen. So 3 of the uncommons that are the most underdrafted are actually the 3 black ones that we called out, the 3 equipment related black ones. And then there are 2 new ones. One is Villainous Hideout. Oh my goodness, this card was so good for me the other day. This is the land where you can tap to add a colorless or add 1 mana of any color to cast a villain or activate a villain's ability. Or, and then just in case you needed something extra, 3 and tap and make a villain you control connive anytime as a sorcery. I had this with Super Skrull. It made it so easy to cast and activate Super Skrull. It gives you so much gas in the late game. People are taking this after pick 5, but it wins more like a better than a 3rd pick, it seems. Now, you could say maybe this means that villains or multicolor villains is underdrafted. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think this land is just so good. It can go in whatever deck, even if it's not a dedicated villain deck, so long as you have, you know, some density of ways to activate it and to make it a good enabler. Okay, and then another one, which actually I think this is the most underdrafted uncommon in the format, is Shield Helicarrier. I was really surprised by this. People, including me, by the way, treat this card as really bad, taking it around pick 7. But it's actually winning healthily more than 55% of the time, more like a 3rd to 4th drop. Sorry, I just realized I forgot to say something important, which is this is just data from the last week. So ignoring the first week of the format. So this is more contemporary stuff. Things did shift a little here when I included the whole range. Okay. And by the way, I also saw Sirkovitz talking about how the Shield Helicarrier is overperforming expectations today. So shout out to him. But yeah, it is crystal clear in the data. And I had been avoiding this card so much. It's probably a niche use case. I'm not saying put it in every single deck, but it is notably underdrafted. So people should be playing it more. This is an area where you could explore. If you're a little bit bored and looking to play with cards you haven't played with yet, Shield Helicarrier, sitting right there. Pick 7. All right, some takeaways. Draft blue-white at least twice as often as you're drafting everything else if you want to have the highest win rate possible, with a bunch of caveats, but that's about where things seem to land. Don't fully force blue-white, but that's about the balance. You know, if I'm doing 4 drafts, maybe about 2 of them should be blue-white and 2 of them should be experiments with other things if the person next to me is forcing blue-white in those drafts. Green-black in particular seems to be an underdrafted archetype. That means if you want to experiment with things you haven't tried before, or if you want to win more, play some green-black. You might win a little bit more often, but also you can have some fun playing with new and different cards if you've just been jamming blue-white because you feel like you have to, but you won't burn as many gems as you would if you tried experimenting with green-red, which is just flopping completely. In particular, maybe try the black equipment. Hey, maybe there's a green-black equipment deck. I don't know. That could be fun. 1-drops do seem to systematically be underdrafted, especially we saw in green and white. I didn't look at the opposite side, what's overdrafted, but at least some 1-drops should be prioritized higher. 1-drop creatures and the 1-drop white plan. And finally, I'm really sorry to the red mages out there. it actually seems like no matter how little people play red, it is still being overdrafted. It just cannot get to an appropriate level. So unfortunately, you should probably still be avoiding red. I'm not saying that that's true at every draft table in every situation, obviously. The one exception is Boros is okay, but even red-white is not doing so hot in the format. So that's my practical advice. I'm going to be trying to put these into action over the next few days. So if you want to see someone trying to have fun in Marvel by playing a wide variety of archetypes without losing too many gems while still ranking up to Mythic, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. And I'll be super, super curious to hear all of your thoughts about the format. Let me know what was most interesting to you, what you enjoyed, what doesn't add as much value. Really, really love any feedback that you have. And thanks so much for watching. Okay, so until tomorrow, have tons of fun playing Magic, and don't be afraid to splash.